camera? Uh-huh. I guess I plugged it in. I don't want to talk about this, people. You don't even know. I've been trying to avoid talking about another bad dream, pretending that it didn't happen. Like when Shimei died, I dreamt she died, right? I already told you about that. For the ones that have been watching my videos, as gray could be, but she had a blanket, a hospital blanket, draped over her like this. So all I seen was from the neck up. Gray as gray could be. Dead as a doornail. I woke up. And whatever happened to Shimei to make her dead was going towards Tisha's room. And we know who was going towards Tisha's room. Julian Johnson, the one who killed Shimei. And sure enough, I don't know. I don't remember talking about it on YouTube because I tried to ignore it, right? It's just a dream. And what do you call it? I think you can hear me. Yeah. And sure enough, it happened. When I least expected it, right under my nose, inside my house. I put my mouth to her mouth as bubbles were coming out. Right? Put air into her and it just come out. Little bubbles all over because they were already coming out. Anyway, so when I have bad dreams, and that's all I ever have in this house are bad dreams. In a roundabout way, or maybe straight up, flat, to the point. They kind of manifest themselves. It's like my dreams prepare me for the drama and the trauma, but it's more the trauma, right? So that you don't lose it up here, turn into a perpetual basket case because of grief, because it's all grief oriented, right? Because we're in a time where we're having to deal with loosh harvesting, with a lot of bad individuals that enjoy hurting others because it empowers them in multiple ways, from physical to intellectual to emotional to physiological, when they're right building on their strengths. And I can't control those individuals. You see, that's the thing. You can't stop them because they are what they are. They're cut from the same cloth, and and they convince themselves that whatever it is that they believe is basically set in stone for them. And even if they're wrong and they know between right and wrong, but they'll find a way to just, okay. So anyway, the dream that I had was regarding Amari. Now, mind you, I listen to these, I guess, AI generated stories, right? Where they're either up in the Appalachian Mountains, the poorest of the poor in the 1800s, and how this family started out and ended up, and then another story how this family over there in the hollow, ended up or whatever. And then along came slavery, AI generated stories around slavery. in the 1800s, right? So I'd listen to those, oftentimes at this time or whatever, I maybe go lay down on the couch and my mind, I doze, right? In between my power sleep. Because I basically have one power sleep, whatever that is. Could be a short one, could be a long one. Usually they're short. That's why they're called power sleeps. And then anything else after that, for the most part, is just, put on the story, go lay down, listen, and then go in and out. So when I'm like in a half wake, half asleep state, or maybe just getting into a sleep state, like a deeper sleep state, I've got this nattering in the background, right? With all these different stories from, video to video to video. So I'm thinking this is how I'm justifying this dream. This is what I'm trying to say. I'm thinking, my mind is internalizing the information that I'm hearing through these videos and these storylines from, different aspects of whatever was going on in the 1800s, depending on the geographical location, right? And who is involved. And, some of this stuff gets pretty ranky. You got just stupid shit. Stupid shit. Slaves killing their masters, masters killing their slaves, fathers inbreeding with their children, and that becomes like a permanent kind of generational thing in the Appalachian Mountains, and abuse there, and different, women just whatever. So, I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, maybe I heard something to awaken a fear that I'm already feeling. I hope you can hear this, because I don't want to have to repeat it, because it's not something I was going to talk about because I'm in denial and I'm afraid. I'm in denial with I don't want to believe my dream will come true because it's regarding Amari. In a nutshell, I dreamt he died. This was a couple, 2-3 weeks ago, right? I woke up, I said, oh my God, Andre, I just, it was like, whatever, right? Whatever. I dreamt Amari died. He goes, died. I said, yeah. He drowned. That's what I said. He drowned because I touched him. I grabbed his arm, and to me, he was dead. But he wasn't in a bathtub full of water, so he didn't drown that way. Andre said I said he was in a bathtub. No, because first of all, Murray would never be in a bathtub by himself, so it would be impossible for him to drown in a freaking bathtub. You know what I mean? So no, but he drowned. There was no water, but I guess he was naked from the torso up, and I grabbed his arm, and he was just dead because he's so fragile, right? Right now with his weight and everything, and I get a lot of pressure because, I'm supposed to create those miracles. It's been a battle ever since I've had him. And, it's not easy being, a grandmother, caregiver, or whatever to, a child like Amari when you're under scrutiny as if, you're the one that created the problem in the first place. And realistically, in the Western world, he represents big money for the middle class to tap into, where they don't pay no taxes on it. You have to remember, if he went into foster care parent would get $4,000 easy peasy, tax free. They don't pay absolutely no taxes on that through the legislation. Okay, the only thing that they're required to is to take them to whatever doctor's appointments. It could be 2 or it could be 20. Okay? Just because they're mandated to do that at the request of a quote unquote, in comes the social workers, right? And because I've already dealt with social workers in the past, fighting for Andre, and just, just with the way society is today, in terms of how people do things and they know it's wrong, but they do it anyway, and then they come back and they justify it, right? And they show absolutely no remorse, because if they did, they'd have to acknowledge that what they were doing was wrong. And I mean, like, we can use the yard in January as the excuse, right? Wiping out the yard, making me pay for it, when in fact it was just you can't even, I don't think it's legal what they did, but you'd have to take it to court. You'd have to challenge it in order to prove that it was illegal before you'd get any, acknowledgement, because they got away with it. And that's the point. They got away with it, right? Just like with what my son and his wife were doing downstairs, they're throwing out, throwing out, throwing out. And, even if I would have called the cops, right, it just would have caused even more tension in the house. And they would have acted out more. Who knows? I don't know. Like, what, take my son to small claims court to recoup my losses, because when that girl moved in, that basement was full of shit. When she's moving out, 3/4 of it is gone, like literally just gone. And I didn't get not one red cent for anything that disappeared downstairs. That was wrong. That was wrong. But do I get any acknowledgement around it? No. Okay, so let's stay focused on what I'm talking about with Amari. So it's the same kind of thing, in a similar kind of way, where I don't know. Okay, so yeah, I woke up the dream, because it disturbs me, and I wasn't going to say anything, try and forget it. I'm listening to these AI generated online stories as I'm catnapping in between my working all day, working all night, doing whatever I'm doing. Clearly, I'm doing shit, right? But of course, people ain't looking for the things that I am doing positively or completing and maintaining on. No, they're looking for the social workers, whoever, okay? For the dirt, for the well, you didn't do this, and blah, and just whatever. Like, oh, it pisses me off, people, because my life is hard enough as it is. The last thing I need is another freaking nightmare playing in the back of my mind, because I'm getting stressed out with just caginess, being cagey. I seen it with Sierra. Yeah, I feel like these social workers I'm dealing with right now have been cagey, and they've been cagey. And I said it a while ago, and they're using everybody's vulnerability against us. They're using Andre's vulnerability against him by trying to victimize him and make himself feel sorry, because he, quote unquote, doesn't have a room at this point because of special circumstances that Andre and I um, fell into to accommodate Amari's needs, where he's basically watched 24/7. He's never left alone for any more than a few minutes, in terms of, and even then, there's, like, you can say he's being left alone right now in the living room, but Andre's on the floor, which means Amari's not going to try and get up on the floor and start crawling around and get into shit. No, he's happy just because Andre is there. Plus, I'm here. So he's not alone, and he's awake, and he's been awake, right? So, and with that, he's happy. He feels safe. He feels secure. He feels loved, right? If he starts to fall off, because he reaches for things. So if he gets into a position where he doesn't feel, I guess you could say, safe, half hanging off, half hanging, half on, half okay. If Amari's on the couch, once he gets to the halfway mark or so of hanging off to reach to get something, what happens with him is his body pushes him forward, because he can't control, I guess, certain parts of his torso, right? And he's got, okay, so the weight of his body um pushes him. So he's at the point in his life where if he gets to a point where he feels like he's going to slip, He won't be able to, like a normal person, pick himself up and whatever. He can't do that. But what he can do is make noise and fuss, call nah, nah, right, which is Nana, right? Um, so that somebody will come and help him, right? So, they don't see it that way though. They don't see they did, and this it was the same thing with Andre when they took Andre. And maybe that's what's so fucking frightening about it. And I'm sorry, boo-boo frightening about it, because at the height of when they took Andre, we were healing as a family with Sierra, in terms of she wasn't an addict anymore. She was functioning. She wasn't perfect. She was a good mom. She had hopes and dreams and aspirations. She was motivated, right? The kids were happy. Uncle John was happy. Everybody was happy until these bitches showed up. Homewreckers. Yeah. And stuck a knife into each and every one of us, people. All for the goods, which was a blonde, curly little 28-month-old boy who is adoptable after 18 months of disenfranchising their parents due to drug addiction and homelessness or whatever. Because they knew that once they took Andre, Sierra would become homeless because she got disconnected from her methadone, which someone came and injected heroin into her veins, and that was it. And of course, I couldn't have her here for any length of time. So ultimately, she stayed homeless. And of course, the government never did anything because there's no value in her outside of what they can exploit out on the streets and, keep the bad guys out on the streets so that they don't creep into the houses and rape the wives and the mothers and the sisters, right? Better for Sierra to be raped versus somebody living in the house over there that's a quote unquote, what, a respectable family. Yeah, okay. You get my point, right? All right. So, they plotted and schemed and they took Andre and everybody became suicidal. And we stayed that way for a very long time as I fought tooth and nail. 22 court dates I went fighting for Andre. And I finally got him back after 15 months. But the damage had already been done. You see, that's the thing. And I feel like whatever these social workers are that I'm dealing with now, even though they like to say, oh, well, we worked with you before. Last time somebody called on you. I'm like, yeah, in my head, well, no, you didn't really work with me. What you did is you came in like an overseer working for the master and you put me in check. And I had to jump through hoops like if I was a barking seal and prove my worth to you versus respect me as a elderly woman that had 5 kids, did whatever, right? With no intervention with them. All of a sudden, I get my grandkids and I'm problematic. I think if I was problematic, the problem would have been when I had Sierra, Marcaine, Shimei. Well, it went Sierra, Marcaine. No, sorry, was Brooks. And then when I had my townhouse, my neighbors called, and it was 1986. It was just as Sierra was getting ready to be born, and I had Brooks, and I was living. So there was 2 separate suites, and the neighbors next to me were really noisy, and there was some parent in there hollering and screaming all this stupid crap. And Brooks was like only 2.5, like he was just little, right? And I was pregnant with Sierra, and I had social services called on me then, and they came and they looked around, and I was renting out rooms. I had rented out 2 rooms. One was to a 16-year-old street youth that lived with me the whole time I lived in that townhouse. And then I had other people, right? But initially, so that was it, right? And then the next time I had contact with them was when I started doing foster care for them at Sarah's house. Yeah. Sarah Sundram. Yeah. Yeah. But they didn't pay me. No. No, but it was a backroom deal just so I could have a roof over my 5 kids' heads, including Uncle John. Oh, so if I was such a bad person, why weren't they messing with me then? Instead of having me bring on another child into a 3-bedroom shanty shack, right? And do free daycare for the mother who was clearly schizophrenic just so that they what? Didn't want to break up the mother's happy home. She was an abandoned woman. Her husband left her there, was hoping for her to fail. Sarah came to me and pleaded, please, look after Gary for me. Because if you don't look after Gary for me, Judy, I had just moved in. The social services are going to take her away. I said, okay, Sarah, no problem, because I can't afford to move. I lived there for like 3.5 years. Yeah, with no pay from the social workers. Child protection. I get my grandsons, one here, one there, and then what? Give me my file. I want to read my file. I keep asking, give me the link so I can put the application in to get the proper freedom of information form, being that it's a ministry that you have to have a special form to get that information. I've asked her like 4 times for sure, to send 5 times to send me the link. She insists that she has my email properly, and she just refuses to do it. Right? And that will give me my ministry file through, I guess you can say, child protection part, right? Which should take it right back to 1986 when I lived in that townhouse, like it was like a duplex, right? It wasn't a townhouse, it was like a duplex. And it was 2 suites connected together, but it was kind of made to be more like a townhouse in terms of levels, because I had a loft. I had a loft, and then I had a second floor, and then the main floor. And I rented out 2 rooms, and my son was under 2 when I had it, and I was pregnant with Sierra. Yeah. But because the neighbor next to me was doing whatever she was doing with her kids, whoever called just said it was me, because I guess I looked the more incompetent one. But besides that point, and then so and I take it personal. I've told them that, because it's not like I'm running around doing stupid shit, right? And I feel sorry for people that look after their grandkids and their nieces and their nephews, and just whether they have disabilities or not. Because from my experience, you automatically become scrutinized. Sooner or later, somebody's got some ulterior motive, and it's coming in from different freaking directions. It could be the landlord that wants to kick you out and got to cause a little trouble. It could be the one that helped to murder your daughter through that person that wants to get the baby. So, you're going to get a little trouble with that, right? It could be the city of Surrey, for all you freaking know, because, they need to free up the houses for the immigrants. So the faster they can get you out, it's just one phone call away, right? You know what I'm saying? My neighbor across the street's got crap all over the place. Not once has the city ever gone there and fucking said not one damn thing. But yet my house, if I don't have a blade of grass cut in time, it becomes too green, or it's too gray, even though it's just coming out of winter. Okay. In terms of yard, right? So they can build a case and then throw it in my face when they rob me of everything in the yard. Right? So anyway, the dream. Now, like I said, I was listening to I listened to these AI generated stories just to take my mind off of whatever it is that I've got going on in it, because I'm having to balance my energy. I got to pick my battles in terms of the big chore for the day. I got to discipline my mind to keep up with the daily chores, like the dishes and the laundry and just blah, 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 right? I've got to make future decisions. I got to make, more immediate decisions. I can't be hasty. I can't be wasteful, so sometimes I just like to lay there, even though I'm like wound up, right? And I know I just need to cat nap for like 20 minutes, maybe an hour and a bit, or just whatever, right? And if the background noise is in there, I don't go into a deep sleep because there's a part of my mind that's kind of wanting to hear the story. So I'm just wondering if maybe that, doing that instigated the bad dream when it came to seeing Amari dead, as I'm being fucking harassed by stupid. Well, okay, I won't call them stupid social workers because they're watching my videos. They got to know what I got to say so they can plan their next move. Whatever. Work with me. Okay, work with me. Either you're going to work with me or you're going to destroy me, because, there's only two ways this can go. And the way things are going, I just don't feel like that we're quote unquote working together, because first of all, I haven't done anything wrong. I am the symptom to the problem. Okay, the problem was a homewrecker moved into my house, destroyed the basement, put a lot of excess pressure on Andre and I upstairs, with having to bring in some of this stuff that was thrown out as we rescued it, people. We rescued it. What part of that don't you understand? And we've been dealing with it right along, like we've been, dealing with Amari and his special needs. And the last time I checked, the only two people who really do love Amari and put in that daily grind 150% is Andre and I. That's it. And they're looking to poke holes at that. Yeah. Yeah, because they think that it's irresponsible of Andre to try and help with Amari, even though Andre's been there since the day Shmay died. Only Andre. I'm not saying I don't get a little help from here and there with Tisha with the, taking to appointments. Yeah, but that's not the daily grind. There's a big difference. I'm not saying that my son wouldn't be there in case of an emergency, because he has been, right? And, he's done a few things here and there. Okay, but now he's bolting. He's literally bolting and leaving me in a sinking ship. We're beyond a leaky boat. We're in a sinking ship. So I have to figure out how to fix the sinking ship. Okay. And it's been like that for a while. So, it's not unusual for me to have bad dreams, because I have them quite regularly, if you notice. But this one's difficult to talk about because Amari died, and I picked his arm and I'm like, what the hell? Oh my God, I think you're dead. I think he died, right? And I woke up because of the, like I did with Shmay. I woke up. Whatever happened to Shmay was going to Tisha's room, and Tisha was going to be next. And I woke up freaking crying. Okay, literally crying. This time, I didn't cry. I just woke up, and I guess Andre was by, because, I sometimes get these little cat naps going on, or whatever time it was. I don't know. I woke up, and I'm pretty sure he was there. And I said, oh my God, I just had a bad dream. He goes, what, Nana? I said, I seen Amari. He died. He drowned. That's what I said. He drowned. Oh, was he in a bathtub or something? He's under the impression that I said he was in a bathtub, but and then when he mentioned that to me, like, because we just talked about it just recently, right? Because of the pressure with the social workers now looking for the quote unquote whatever, so that what, you're going to take Amari, and are we back to the freaking metal cage with it being padded? Plug in a freaking feeding tube in there, make it so that he can't move, because if he can move and he can use his arm, if he can use his arm, he's going to rip it out. And then what? You're going to take him to the hospital because it's going to get infected. Or what? Like how do they plan on what, medicate him? Is that it? You're going to make him docile so he doesn't move. He's out of touch with freaking reality to mask what? What are you masking? And he's going to thrive under those conditions. Okay, yeah, sure. Right. Because I already went through that fear with them, because they're looking every stone that they can turn right now. Right? You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, let me put it to you this way. The way I'm seeing it and feeling it right now, and I'm trying to be brave about it, because I already told Andre, if they think that they're going to take Amari, and Andre and I ain't fighting for him to get him back, they got another thing coming, because I will fight tooth and nail. I don't care. I will fight tooth and freaking nail. And Andre will stand beside me, because we love Amari. Okay. And we do nothing wrong. And we worry about him every day, because we love him. Right. And he's skinny. But let me tell you something about that skinny before I get on to this other crap. Every now and then I deal with different professionals regarding Amari's needs. So just recently we got a wheelchair. No, a stroller. The Variety Club had to get involved, right? To be specially fitted for his needs, right? We had a wheelchair. It used to sit there, and anyway, it's more doable to have a stroller. So we exchanged the wheelchair and we got the stroller. And through that, and then we've got another thing coming that's going to go there that has a tray. It's not a wheelchair, but it's a little more comfortable than a wheelchair. It's called a tomato chair, but only this one's a little more fancy, right? And they're specifically designed for the child to sit in them much more comfortably, right? With the special supports that they need depending on where they need them, right? Because some kids can't even hold themselves up. Amari can. He can do all that, but he can't pick himself up. So, all right. So through that conversation with the woman that helped me to facilitate those two vehicles, right, for Amari, equipment, right? And I expressed that he's skinny, right? He's not putting on weight, losing muscle mass. It's been a problem. Right? And he's on his Pediasures. We feed him all the time. I'm going to be cooking him lamb today. Right? He's getting a fair amount of meat. He's going to get some sardines. So he'll probably get some sardines today and then maybe some lamb tonight. And then it'll be more lamb tomorrow on top of everything else that he gets. He gets a whole lot of whipping cream. He gets a whole lot of yogurts. He gets his eggs and his beans, and he had pear and banana and just, right? And it's just something's wrong. And anyway, what she told me was that she understands what I'm saying in terms of when she fits a child with severe cerebral palsy into these, whether it's a wheelchair, a bumble chair, a stroller, or like a tomato chair or a stroller, a stander or whatever, okay? Because there's different types of equipment, right? What she's noticed as a professional over the years is their waist and hip areas, just that area, that with circumference doesn't change. It's only slightly. They tend to get a little longer, but yeah, many of them are skinny and their bones just don't grow. If you're fitting a child in a wheelchair with a waist like that at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it's still pretty much the same, and now he's 14 and it's still pretty much the same, what does that tell you? Is that your fault for not doing something right? Or does it have something to maybe do with the cerebral palsy? Or maybe the physiological effects of the cerebral palsy, where certain parts of the brain just don't work and can't send out the signals. Okay, there's only so many things that are wrong with Amari. It's either it's his brain that's making him do this, like in the beginning, right? Before, right? His right arm and right leg were always skinny, right? Skinny is be compared to his left and left leg, right? He uses stronger. This one, I don't know if you, where am I? Okay. Right. Right. It's just, I don't know. Right. And over time with age, because the seizures are just whatever, maybe there's something going on in the brain where it's like just because I have been told it can get worse, right? Seizures can bring on, causes problems, right? That's why they try and stop them so that they don't develop more brain damage from the seizures, right? And he's already had a few, or just with age, because I've talked to a neurologist, right? A neurologist for the head, right? A couple of times, but the first one that I ever talked to said that by age 20, because he wanted to do a follow up, and I said, why? And he goes, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, what was, absolutely necessary? If because he said that the brain will deteriorate over time. So they like to see how much it deteriorated in order to quote unquote justify the MRI at a later date, even though he just had one. Okay. And I said, well, if you already know it's being deteriorating, what's the point outside of to say that you could see that, right? Right? And it wasn't required at that time. So, he was talking like in his early adulthoods in 18, 19, 20, you might want to consider doing another MRI just to see if the brain is deteriorated. So it is possible, right? And then also too, they have digestive problems, and with these supplemental drinks, and then these what do you call these things, they want you to end up using more and more laxatives and blah 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 blah. And so maybe he's got gastro problems and he's not absorbing his food properly, or it could be a hormone that's directly related to the bone. But then if that's the case, why is it the muscles? Why is it, right? You know what I'm saying? So the thing is, when people don't know these things, aren't faced with these things, in terms of you love somebody that has something wrong, whether it's just a given, like those kids that woman fits for those wheelchairs and this and that, and she fits them when they're 5 years old with a waist like this, and by the time they're 14, she's still working there, and they only grew an inch in 7 years, while everybody else is running around saying, well, what are you doing wrong? Well, it's not that we're doing anything wrong, it's just that's the way it is, as if we want that for the child that we love, right? So what I'm trying to say is the social workers use love in a nutshell against Andre and me. They make us feel bad in a roundabout kind of way, because they're trying to put their fingers in the cookie jar, make a quick buck, be on, show me the bitch that they can do it. Well, you already showed me with Andre. So it's not like I don't know you couldn't do it. That's the problem. I know you guys do it. And you basically ruined my family and what is little left. It's not, I don't, just like I said, right? I mean, maybe she's just covering her bases because, whatever. I don't know. I just know that the dream that I had frightens me because of what happened to Shimei and other dreams that I've had that have came about in a roundabout way. Obviously, I worry about Amari every single day, all day long. So if I do that every day, all day long, for the most part, right? Why wouldn't I do it in my sleep? To AI stories in the background, trying to, get that cat nap going in and out, just to get the energy so I can do the daily grind, something that these social workers don't acknowledge outside of, well, your house is a bit, this and that. Well, yeah, but then, you need to factor in what I've been dealing with the home record that moved in downstairs and now is basically walking out with the goods because everything else is gone. Right? So, like, for what it's worth, I mean, like, it didn't it's just, and leaving me in a sinking boat yet. Yep. It's like setting me up for failure. And I just, yeah. And so I'm fighting against that. I fight against that. I fight against it with my son and his wife because, it's been an ongoing battle with them, with their disrespect and the destruction of my belongings. They could have been more helpful for everything that got ruined. and destroyed and disappeared and blah, 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 blah. It could have been sold and somebody could have gotten something out of it. Or, it could have been given away, at least with my knowledge and blessing, versus given away behind my back, right? And it could have been all done in a timely manner if we would have just worked as a team. But of course, that wasn't the agenda because I'm, had an antisocial person in my house who wants to accuse me of being antisocial because I'm dedicated to the cause when it becomes being a mom to my dependent son downstairs. Now that he's finally moving, he's not dependent, but besides that point, and then taking on the responsibility of raising my grandkids, good or bad. Cerebral palsy is not fun. Maybe if you have a mild case, I could see it being a little easier. But when you got a severe case, oh my God, it's not a cakewalk. And people that have no clue, but yet think they have every right to scrutinize you to the point where they put direct fear into you so that they're hoping somehow secretly for you to fail and just break. You know how they say break under the pressure, right? So that they have an excuse to do whatever it is that they've been wanting to do the whole time when they first came into your life, right? Just so I don't know how to shake off that dream. In part because of the dream that I had with Shimei. And I couldn't stop Shimei from being murdered. I just couldn't. I didn't see it coming. I seen it coming, but I didn't know when it was coming. And I couldn't stop it because I didn't expect it to happen. Julian wasn't even living in the house. He phoned at 6 a.m. crying on about, oh, I need to hide out and get some sleep because my mother's house got robbed. Can I come there? That's all it took. He showed up at 6:30. I heard Shimei in teacher's room singing to Amari. Well, yeah, 6:30. So he called at 6, got it on her cell phone. By 6:30, he showed up. By 6:30, she was in Tisha's room, so she left him by himself. She didn't even want to be with him, but she felt a duty to him because of the baby, right? And went into Tisha's room, was singing to the baby for a half an hour. I freaking heard her, thinking everything's fine. I heard my son go to work, thinking everything's fine. Tisha gets home at 7, and she working McDonald's or something, I don't know. And wherever. She got home from her girlfriend's. She got home at 7. I heard the girls talking, right? Because it was just right above where Andre was, right? Talking in the bedroom for an hour. I'm thinking everything's fine. I guess Shimei went into the living room. Through the timeline, we already know that she was murdered by 9 o'clock. By 9:10, she was dead. Julian moved her at some point, pretty much changed her shirt, did all that, and then called Wolf by 10. So I heard her talking to Tisha between 7 and 8, and by 10 o'clock, she was fucking dead. Like, come on. How would I have known that? Outside of my dream telling me it was coming. And to prepare myself for it so I wouldn't freaking lose it and become a basket case. So that's kind of how I feel about this dream. And because I worry about Amari. I worry more than anybody on this freaking planet worries. Okay. So what's going to happen though is he's going to have at an appointment with a gastrologist. We're just waiting for that. As soon as that comes in, just, I don't know. I'm still up with it's still up for debate with the feeding tube because one, he's way, way, way too active and he likes to eat and he has no problem drinking. Right. It's just, he's not putting on the weight. Now, mind you, he burns a lot of energy, but even still, it goes back to that default with that worker like Amari. where their wastes just don't ever seem to change. They're like that when they're little. They're like that when they're little. And they're like that when they're teenagers. So is that what I'm kind of looking at with Amari? I hope so, because I want him to live a long time. Right? I had that dream with Shemaine, and she was dead within a year. Right? Now, mind you, I've had dreams where they haven't manifested themselves yet. So maybe there is time for Amari, because I dreamt through the nonprofit before I even put it all really together that I was going to generate over $1 million, but it wasn't going to be my money because of my community activism. But then I think about that Punjabi who stole my freaking certificates, had his buddy sign on as a board director, then told me to sign them off. And then when I asked him for my certificates, he's playing dumb and saying, oh, well, I don't have them. I don't even know who you are. Click. So maybe I did generate $1 million and I just don't know about it, quote unquote, with the foundation. So maybe that dream did come through. That would have to be an investigation into that guy. But nobody going to investigate him for nothing, right? Just saying, right? Because, he's got network. He was working with immigrants. He got hit by a car, got a whole bunch of money, became a lawyer to do all the immigrants coming in. And then he wanted to use the foundation as a tax write-off for them without having to pay for their fees. So he could get the kickbacks on it. But anything he ever wanted to do sounded legitimate, but he never involved me in it. So whether he did it or not, I don't know. But so maybe the dream did come true, maybe the dream. But outside of that, I myself personally have yet to generate $1 million for the nonprofit and say that I did it. Okay. So there is some hope in there. But not if I'm going to be constantly harassed and under just, I don't know. Like if they try and take Amari and they take Amari and he ends up in some strange house, honest to God, the person that gets him is going to be happy with the $4 freaking grand. Easy peasy. Yeah. But they're not going to do what Andre and I do. Hell no. Now that my son is moving out and I get the basement, I'm like, Andre, what do you think we should do after? Because the carpet, something's going to have to happen down there. I was talking to my neighbor and she was saying something happened, I guess, in her house a long time ago, something similar. And the tenant that lived in the basement had to move, and it had to go to court to get the landlord to do the proper restoration where the sewage spilled out in terms of drywall, carpets, even floorboards. And we've already got bad floorboards down there. So some of the floorboards technically need to be changed. So, I mean, that right there is an uphill battle. Are the social workers going to work with me on that? Right? Advocate with the landlord to do the right thing and be responsible? Or are they going to use my landlord's negligence to not do anything about what happened downstairs against me and then accuse me of making it sound like I can't provide a safe place for my grandkids because my landlord doesn't want to clean up after freaking sewage and do some restoration, like changing carpets and that kind of crap, floorboards if need be, and drywall if need be. And I had to go to court in order to get the landlord to do it. Wow. Are the social workers going to help me with that? If it gets to that point? Because as it is, my landlords will probably expect me to live with it like that, especially with nobody advocating for me. My son left. He's not going to advocate for me. He's gone. Right? My landlords won't advocate for me because I don't pay enough rent. I'm a problem in the yard. I don't do enough yard work to satisfy the city, even though my neighborhood is being ripped up, where fucking sewage is coming up your freaking toilet, okay, and all over your freaking bathroom and down the hall, okay, and I'm the problem? Okay. So I said to Andre, on a good note, and I'm going to leave it like this because I said what I had to say about this bad dream. I can't let it stop me from moving forward, doing what I need to do. You can't live in fear, right? Because I've been in fear, right? I'm already in fear. So that's, oftentimes when you have these kind of dreams, I feared for Shimei's life with Julian when Shimei was alive because she said he already threatened to kill us all. So whatever was going on, my brain internalized it and prepared me for it so that when it did happen, because she's not the first woman that was murdered through domestic violence, right? You know what I'm saying? And even when I was young, I had to break away from abusive relationships and never go back and never look and never open my door, get the fuck out of here, blah, in order to preserve my life, right? Where Shimei just wasn't there yet because she never really experienced domestic violence in her relationships like I had seen or been through personally before she was born, right? She was young, where I knew better, right? So I saved myself, right? A couple times I almost died because of men. So when you go through experiences like that and you almost died, I can think of 2 for sure, 3. Yeah. I'm going to tell you the stories, but yeah, 3 different times I could have died and I had to fight my way out. Literally, I had to fight my way out and run and never look back. Okay? Even if I had been intimate with them, right? And so with the Mari's dream, that's what I'm trying to say is, your brain internalizes your daily whatever you're coming into contact, and then it categorizes it into whatever. And so when you have a dream, it's just processing that information that you've been dealing with, over the last little while or whatever, so that you can compartmentalize it and basically, I suppose, ignore it, where you can just focus on the daily grind or whatever it is adults do and not let it interfere with your ability to be productive. That's the only thing I can think of in terms of, or it's a just to prepare you so that you have the strength to be able to cope with it if it should happen. If it should. And if it does, then yeah, So, and I've definitely been under a lot of stress because Andre's been saying now you're talking more and more again in your sleep. Just yada yada yak 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 yak, yak 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 yak. Just I said, well, I'm under stress. Do you blame me? He said, no. I said, well, there you go, right? I don't know how long these social workers plan on keeping their teeth in me. I don't think it's fair. I haven't done anything wrong. If I need them, I can call them. If something happens, I'm sure they'll be called. Right? That's a given. That was always a given. That's the way it's been. Right? So, in the meantime, though, I'm working with what I have. And considering all things said, I don't know. I don't think they could do it. If they had to walk in my shoes, no way. It takes time to establish some gills, some hair on your chest, stamina. So, yeah, okay. So, in regards to Amari's skinny little self and everywhere else on his body, basically, because he still has, his left side is still a little beefy, but not as much as we'd like, right? Like he lost a tooth, his tooth not even coming in. So when the gastrologist appointment comes in at the Children's Hospital, we're booking an appointment with, it's called endocrine or something like that. And what that department does is check bone health. And that referral actually came in from Dr. Prairie. And when I stopped seeing Dr. Prairie, it just whatever, it kind of got canceled. And then it kind of called me again, but with the weight and everything, and the feeding tube and the gastro team. Well, okay, so we got now the gastro team to see if it's either going to be something to do with his intestine in general or something with the option of feeding tube, which at this point I would say no, because it would cause a lot of complications because he's very active. And that's why you got to be the daily grind with the foods, right? So, and then also with the endocrine, because it's to do more with bone health, they'll see if maybe he's lacking in a hormone where he's maybe not digesting, well, at least calcium. I don't know what other, because it's bone, right? So there's a hormone in the body that if it's not working properly, which could be, again, brain related because of the severe front lobe damage, right? That could be or could not be getting worse depending on whatever, right? Maybe making that pathway that makes that hormone work inaccessible. So that's specifically to check for a hormone and that type of thing to see if he's absorbing the nutrients. I would think mainly calcium and anything else that's related to bone. Because if there is that issue, then they provide a supplement. And then the only other thing that I push for, in terms of what I push for when I'm coming into contact with these people and these doctors and all this stuff, is it's brain related. Just doesn't work. Whatever is there that controls that part of the body, or how the body is supposed to work, it just isn't there. Like when you're dead, the reason you don't move is because that part of the brain just doesn't work. That's what makes you dead. The whole brain is dead. Amari's whole brain is not dead. Just parts of his brain is dead. And that maybe that's what that dream was about. Because the only thing that I could think of quite in any kind of way in terms of if he drowned, it wouldn't be in a bathtub. No way. The only way he could drown is if he puked and like we're sleeping or something. He's sleeping. Okay, we're all sleeping. And right, okay, because they get full or whatever, right? I mean, like there's right. And if I didn't hear it and I didn't see it, Andre didn't hear it, Andre didn't see it, and so far we've always caught it, and it comes at different hours of the day. It could be at 2:00 in the morning, could be at 2:00 in the afternoon, could be at 10:00 at night, it could be at 7:00 at night, it could be 5:00 in the morning. You just don't know. So what if he did that when we were all sleeping, Andre and I sleeping, and he did it to himself, and it backdrafted, and that fluid got into his lungs, depending on what the fluid is, right? Because obviously milk is a little more gummy, or juice is a little more runny, right? Or whatever. And he drowned that way. Asphyxiation, I think that's what they call it, right? He asphyxiated on his vomit. Or whatever. That's the only way I could see him drowning. And clearly I went to go check on him, and I'm like, what's this? Ugh. He died. I woke up. I told Andre. and I've been battling it ever since. Well, I've got social workers digging around in the dirt looking for clues to point even more fingers at me when they don't even know what the hell we go through to make Amari happy, considering his life and what he's up against. Right? He didn't ask to be born this way. Right? And it's true. Most people don't really care about people with disabilities. I'm not even going to put it on a child. I'm just going to put it on disabilities in general because they're very, I just want to say, self-centered. Right? So, and for the ones that say they care, well, it goes back to anybody can talk. It just talk, 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 talk. Until you actually do the walk, there's a fine line in there in terms of what you think you know and what you don't know, right? When it comes to looking after a child like Amari and being on that emotional roller coaster, because that's what you get. And you better be prepared to be attacked, be put under a microscope, made to be fearful because somebody else thinks they can do a better job than you, even though they don't not even lift one finger. And if they do lift a finger, it's just so that you, well, basically get hurt at the expense of hurting the child. Because the only alternative for Amari at this point would be in foster care. And for the financial part of it, for sure, for the power tripping part of it, for sure, seen that with Andre, and for the destruction of the family that's left behind, for sure, right? Because I already had it happen to me once, and there's consequences around that shit. And that's why I got 2 dead daughters now. You can contribute that to the influences that were negative at that time that led up to those deaths, right? And yeah. To Andre, I said, well, now that things are opening up here and Nana's get a chance, and that's assuming that the basement gets restored a little bit here. Because if I don't ask my landlord to do the right thing, then I'll be accused of being negligent. Right? You see, it always goes back to that. If I ask and she does it, then she becomes resentful against me because I'm quote unquote costing her money and not quote unquote paying enough rent, which sets me up for the city to come by and complain either too green, too gray, or whatever, too white with the morning glory when they start to bloom their little white flowers. So that could be thrown in my face. Well, the social workers are still walking around secretly laughing. So I said to Andre, assuming that we can get the basement figured out, maybe we should try and set up a mattress down there just for fun, right? See what it would be like because I talked to him. Well, things are going to start moving around soon, blah, 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 right? The bedroom's going to open up. Would you sleep here? Would you sleep there? No, no. Why? Room's too hot. I know. Okay. Other room. No. That one gets hot and stuffy. Plus, it always goes back to that default with Amari. Wherever Amari goes, we're going to migrate to Amari. I said, okay, well, what about sleeping on the bottom bunk in the bedroom, you and Amari, like one way, and me at the end of the bed, like the good old days when I was looking after Gary Syndrome, for the Ministry of Children and Family Development for free for 3.5 years. And Gary got the top bunk, and my two daughters got the bottom bunk, and they slept one way together, side by side, and I slept at the end of the bed like a dog. It was okay then. Social workers didn't bother me then. They left me alone. They didn't care. No, they didn't have to pay me nothing. Is that why maybe they're not giving me my file? Because that should be in my file. I really want to see. Were they making money on that? I don't know, because I never got paid for it, but I did it. So much so that my son, that man, resents me for looking after that little girl more, paying attention to her, than I guess I did to him. He held a grudge against me for years on that one. But it was a matter of survival, because if I didn't look after her, I wouldn't have had a place to live, and I couldn't afford to fucking leave because I'd been illegally cut off of welfare by a government worker that knew that it was illegal but did it anyway. Well, my government, umpteen years later, thinks I should have taken them to the court then, when I got cut off in the middle of winter with 5 dependent kids and a blind man, as if I'm going to go figure out how to go to court and take my government against legislation that came from the United States of America. Yeah, sure. It's just one big game. It's just one big freaking game. I said to Andre, do you think maybe we should try that just for the sake of it? Just see what happens? Like, being that there's so much pressure for us to be in a bedroom, somebody to be in a bedroom, right? Right? If I leave Amari and Andre by themselves, you just. So anyway, we're thinking about maybe trying it out that way. I don't know. We're just taking it one day at a time, doing what we can, keeping up with the daily chores as best as we can. Andre obviously is still learning, right? So I do as much as I can in a day, blah, 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 as I always have. And, now that maybe some options are opening up here, providing that there's some general restoration maintenance regarding carpet and that type of thing. I don't know. See, Amari won't move right now because Andre's there. If Amari was there by himself, he already would have been on the floor halfway across the room, grabbing this and grabbing that and grabbing anything and everything that he could possibly grab. And he'd be laughing and real sneaky about it. Real sneaky about it. So you got to be careful, right? Because he can hurt himself, But because Andre's in there, he's feeling safe, comfortable, happy, loved, secure. All the things that Andre felt before they took him. So it would not be unusual to have a bad dream. This is the second or third bad dream that I've had with Mari since these social workers have showed up. I think two dreams, I think, already with Amari. Yeah, because, he's the weak link, right? But it's not my fault. So I'm making him some lamb today. What time is it? I'm going to cook him up some lamb. And he gets some sardines. So he gets 2 doses of, fish is, is not 2 doses of well, that's not necessarily true, because the lamb, whatever lamb I make, it will be good for 3 meals anyway. 3 to 4 meals, depending on how much I make, right? But by proportion, probably about 3 meals. And then the sardine can, I like to break it up into 2 separate. I don't like to, I break it up into 2 separate servings with mayonnaise, right? So he gets some sardines today for sure. And he's going to get some lamb today. Once or twice. Because once I make it, he can have it during the day, and then he has again another portion in the evening with yogurt. And he loves it. Yeah, he loves it. All right, end of the video. Nothing I can do about bad dreams other than try not to worry.